my gosh, and you have your Sacha-Twina hat.
Of course, I couldn't not
cannot
wear it.
stand it. Oh, hi, beautiful. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing me with your community, Emily.
I'm so happy to have you here. And so happy that we're going to have this conversation, whatever it becomes, right? I know we have some plans, but you never know. You never know what happens. I'm going to leave the comments on for just a little bit, and then we'll turn them off because I just learned today that there is a question box. So if you guys have questions, you can type them into the question box, and I will still see them. That way we can see your beautiful face and you won't have comments just scrolling past it. But for all of those of you who don't know Sarah Jenks, she's an amazing entrepreneur who works with women all over the world to help them find their voice, their power, their truth. She owns a retreat center in Massachusetts where she has these amazing women's gatherings. And you're also a wife and a mama of three. You have a full life.
I really do.
My goodness.
Full and beautiful and lots of support.
Lots of support, which is everything. And you're here to talk with us today. So from what I understand, because we don't know each other, we just spoke for the first time the other day. Yeah. You're friends with Satya, who's my business partner and co-founder of AMMA. But you work with many women who feel like they have lost themselves.
Yeah.
And whether that's in motherhood, in marriage, in their job, their obsession with their weight, or all of the above, all of the things. And and I say we because this is also with AMMA, we just wanted to know what trends you are seeing in women right now during this crazy season of our lives.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to our relationships and how we continue to lose ourselves and how we lose ourselves in our relationships and how we struggle with finding ourselves. And I mean, that's one of many things that we'll be talking about today. But first, I just want to make sure that you get to share just a little bit of your story and why you do this kind of work so that we can all get to know you better.
Thank you. Well, it really started because I struggled with my weight from a very young age. And I felt like I couldn't get my life started until I looked a certain way. And so this was basically the running theme for most of my life. And it wasn't until I started to realize that I was eating for stress relief. I was eating because I had all of these emotions I wasn't in touch with, I didn't know about. And I thought that everything would be perfect if I looked a certain way. And I realized that my life didn't suck because of my body. My life sucked because my life sucked and I wasn't doing anything about it. So I became an emotional eating expert. I went through this whole thing where I realized that my life was so much better when I got in touch with what was really bothering me, doing the inner work. And then from working with women on emotional eating, what I realized is that everyone was telling me the same story, which was, I don't know who I am. And I don't feel, when I have little glimpses of my like wild self-expressed self, I go into a total panic attack about showing that part of me to the people that love me the most, to our parents, to our partners, to our closest girlfriends. And so I started following this thread of not feeling safe to be ourselves, but also then going a layer deeper and really understanding the brainwashing that women have received for, I mean, thousands of years. And still today, about how I always say that we're trained to be the stage crew for everybody else instead of the star of our own life. And
that's so good.
Right. And I just really started to feel really passionate and angry that this was not only happening with me and my life, but I saw it with all of my clients. And so I went on to create a membership program called Whole Woman, which is a sanctuary where women can come and practice being who they are, and so that we can learn how to stand in our power and have positive reflections of it, and learn how to be unique and different and all that stuff. And so that's been a really beautiful journey. And I just created a marriage course with my husband,
Wow.
Jonathan, that's coming out in a couple weeks, called Modern Marriage. So, because what I've seen is, like, now I have these, you know, hundreds of women who are growing and taking care of themselves and going, you know, coming to a retreat, you know, at, I call it the Moon Lodge, which is my home temple where I hold women's circles. And then they go home, and within 20 minutes, they feel shut down and like they can't be themselves. And I just realized, like, okay, this is the next circle of work we have to do, which is to really understand how can we modernize marriage to create these environments for women to actually grow and encourage their partners to grow, and not get met with that's not important, that's useless, you know, all this stuff that can end up happening within relationships. And right now, really what I'm seeing in all parts of our life, but especially our partnerships, is that whatever issues we have now are issues we've always had. They're just extreme.
Right.
And I think that's a really important way to look at this time, as really an opportunity to clear and to work through issues we've always had. And,
That's so
you know,
fascinating, because I think a lot of people walk around right now just saying, oh my gosh, this time is crazy.
yeah,
If it wasn't for this virus and everything going on, then my life would be the way that it should be, right? And of course, it's everything is heightened, but it's I love, because when you and I talked the other day, I loved what you said, that yeah, but the stuff is the stuff that is always there. We just don't have the same distractions anymore.
exactly.
And just
Exactly.
leaving the house and taking off for a day really can be a distraction. And I know for myself, I've been facing all sorts of demons inside my house
Yeah.
because it's in my face, and I have to be here. I have to stay here and face it. And I really get to see how I'm showing up in my relationships, in my marriage, in my relationships with my kids. I get to see how they really show up for me, and I get to see how I show up or do not show up for myself.
Yeah.
And it's so heightened right now. And I love to look at it as an opportunity to just stop for a second and just go, okay, well, show me.
Right.
Life, come on, show me the things
Yeah.
that I'm never willing to see. But then the question is, if we're brave enough to ask that question, what do we do with the information that we get?
Yes. Yes. Such a great question.
And how do we stop? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I'd love to just break down the process that I do with my clients. Is
Yeah.
that
Yes,
great?
please. That's awesome.
So I think first, what I want everyone to understand is that all of the things that feel hard or annoying are hurtful, are hard and annoying and hurtful. I think that oftentimes, because women are trained to be peacekeepers, often the best way to be a peacekeeper is to convince ourselves that we are being too sensitive, or that we are wrong, or that there's something wrong with us and we just need to be more tolerant or more patient or less codependent, or, you know, any of those words that really have us like stuff down those hard feelings. And that's where the food comes in, is because often when we can't verbally express how we actually feel, we need to stuff it down with food. So I think it's important for women first to understand the system that really encourages women to be the stage crew. And really what that is, you know, that this system has been going on for, you know, people say between 4,000 and 7,000 years, where women have been trained to be unseen, unpaid, unappreciated labor. And of course, we've seen a lot of changes in the workplace and the right to vote, but that brainwashing is still in us. And so when we, like, let's say our husband raises his voice in the kitchen around us or our kids, and we get really nervous or super frustrated. And then we often go through the process of saying, like, oh, well, that's just normal. That's okay. You know, that's just the way he is, and I just need to deal with it and move on. Or we find that we automatically are taking on everything in the house. Something I saw with a lot of my clients where there's two working parents and then COVID hit and then both people are at home, and the woman, if it's a male female relationship, are doing 70% of the household issues because they just are trained to take it on. And I think it's really important to understand, like, what are the unassumed job descriptions that we've taken on in our life. So, you know, Jonathan and I talk about this in our relationship. He came in with the job description of, I need to work and make money, period. And so anything he does beyond working and making money, he feels like he's winning, you know. And I came in with the job description of, I have to do everything. I have to make money, and I have to take care of the kids, and I have to do everything around the house. So anything that I'm doing under that makes me feel like I'm doing a terrible job. And I feel so bad when I'm not getting the laundry done, or I'm not doing the dishes. And so if I think I'm supposed to do the dishes 7 days a week and I do it 6 days a week, this is an extreme example. I don't do any dishes, but you know, and I feel bad. But if Jonathan does it one time, he's like, but I did the dishes today.
Yeah.
So I think that first we have to understand that these job descriptions, or this brainwashing that we come in with, is grossly inequitable and has been built into our system so that women don't speak up, and that we are constantly in a state of overwhelm and exhaustion. And so really what this is about is undoing, you know, generations of patterns that are really hurting women. And, you know, I always talk about, like, this is the women's march in our kitchen. Like, this is actually feminist revolutionary work to try to work towards a way for it to be equitable. But first we have to understand all of those inner voices that are telling us we should not ask for more.
Oh, it makes so much sense. I think, and I can only really speak from my own perspective, so I will, because what we have here is that when we found out that we were pregnant, Justin was the main breadwinner, and we just knew that that was a balance that we were going to have. He was going to make the money and be the material provider, and I would be the primary caretaker. And that's something that we agreed on together, and it's something that just worked for us. But I'm noticing that where we get caught sometimes is when I try to explain what emotional and mental labor is, right? The invisible work in the home, the stuff that they don't give out awards for, the stuff that you don't get a great review for, or whatever it might be, like the stuff that is just expected and unseen. Anything that comes with the kids, the emotional and the worry, the anxiety that you have as a mother around your kids, that you have as a mother around your kids, just as it is. And then everything on top of that, knowing what the allergies are, knowing the dietary restrictions, knowing the parent handbook from school by heart, pickup times, babysitting, all of that, everything, what the household is running out of, the stuff that we need to get from the market, all these little things that just feel like so much sometimes. It feels like it never ends. And then you see your partner leave to go out and have a day with adults and create something that is coming from a place in him that is his dream and his passion. And that's where we have struggled. Of course, I have my opportunities to do the same thing, but that's where Justin and I have struggled because it feels like we're standing on two different planets.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to describe to me what a pressure that is, because he feels like it's completely on his shoulders to provide for our family, which
Yeah.
is a lot. And that too can be a burden.
Mm-hmm.
And I stand over here and I feel like, but I have so much to hold too.
Mm-hmm.
But when I try to explain and describe what that is, I feel bad.
Right. Right.
And I feel guilty for complaining when he is pulling and pushing so much.
Mm-hmm.
Why does that happen? Why do we get so afraid to talk about the labor that we're taking on and the burden? Sometimes it's not always a burden, but often it feels like a burden that we're holding. How do we communicate that in a way that doesn't feel like an attack on their character, or
Yeah.
that we're saying you are not doing enough, look
Mm-hmm.
at me?
Yeah.
um and what do we just do with that fear of sounding like we're nags and like we're whining? And
Yeah.
I'm bringing this up because I know it's a thing. I've talked to
It's such a
so
thing.
many women about this, and we all, like, I even feel, oh my gosh, am I saying too much? What do I sound like right now? I'm feeling all of the feelings just speaking
Yeah.
to you right now.
Yeah.
What is that stuff?
Okay, so it's so many things. The first thing
Yeah.
is that I really love the work by Dr. Valerie Ryan, and she talks about our inherited trauma. And so so I used to see inherited trauma as sort of like a spiritual, emotional thing, but what Valerie Ryan pointed out in her book called Patriarchy Stress Disorder, which is a must read for
Oh,
everybody.
wow.
They, our grandmothers and great grandmothers and our mothers, and we still feel this today, we were trained, basically, we all come from a long line of women that if we complained, we could have been put out on the street with no rights, right? So women were owned. And if we complained, our lives were often in danger. Our kids were then often in danger. And so when we have that stress response, that trauma, it actually changes our brain chemistry and our DNA and our genetics that we pass on to our children.
Wow.
So
So it's
often
physically passed
it's
on.
physically passed on, like biologically, physically passed on. So what the work is that you are speaking to your husband and wanting to be honest about how hard your day was, but you're having a trauma response that you're going to get kicked out of the house. So even though intellectually now, sorry, I'm hitting my head. Even intellectually now that that's not true, your body
Right. I'm safe.
doesn't know that that's not true because that's inherited. So the way to move through that is through the body. So just as you know, like mental yoga, Kundalini yoga, shaking is really helpful, like jumping up and shaking and just telling yourself, oh, this is inherited trauma. This isn't true. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. And then, so Jonathan and I also had this in our relationship where we used to feel like there had to be a winner for whose life was worse. And
I totally relate to that.
right?
It's so silly.
And
yeah,
like,
we have to think of like, who's the most tired?
Who's the most tired?
Yeah.
Right? Because we felt like the only way to be seen was to win the My Life Sucks game. And so Jonathan and I are all about creating agreements. Like we have all of these marital contracts, like all over the house that we've signed and that's a big part of what we talk about in our course is basically we haven't been taught in marriage to have agreements and to create like mission statements and all these things. So one agreement that Jonathan and I have is that our own discomfort has nothing to do with the other person. And like we can create space to share about how we're feeling without it being that the other person did a bad job.
So important.
It's so important. And
because
so
now you're not pointing fingers and you're
right.
owning your own trauma and your wound, but you have a safe container to talk about it.
Right. And
right.
also and working with compassion, because I can say to Jonathan, because I used to be the primary breadwinner and now Jonathan is. And well, we share, we're like 60-40, but I used to do 90% of the money. And so, and while he was in residency and to be a surgeon. And so we would have this conversation where I would come home, or he would come home, and I would just rant about how terrible my day was. And he didn't feel like he had any space to talk about how hard his day was because he knew he was putting so much on me. But we had this practice of saying, I really see how hard you're working, and I had some hard things today that have nothing to do with you. And so that's been a good way for us to learn. But I think the other important thing for women to understand is that, like, going off and working with adults and doing something we're passionate about is not the same as doing laundry. It's not the same. It's not the same as going to the grocery store, you know, because we don't get fed by going grocery shopping. I mean, maybe some people do, but like I don't get fed by going grocery shopping. And although Jonathan is, you know, working hard and feels financial responsibility, he gets fed a lot by his work of being a physician. And I know for me, it is so much easier for me to go and work all day than it is for me to go and be with my kids all day.
1,000 times.
Like, so much easier.
And there are some people that are very different from us. And
Totally.
I just bow down to those mamas that truly enjoy being with their kids all day, and they come up with new games and magic. And there are those extraordinary humans out there, which is amazing. But I'm very much like you, and many of my friends are as well, where we can do that for a short while, and then we just like, it's like running into a wall, and you just like, I got nothing else. And you feel this desire to sit down and have an adult conversation, and even be in challenging meetings, but at work where you're with other adults and you're thriving in a different way than holding a lot of the things that you hold at home. And
I used to feel bad about that.
I still feel bad about that.
You know, I used to feel bad because, again, that's the brainwashing. The brainwashing is that all women who have children should want to be home with them and like happily taking care of the house all day. That's the job description. But the truth is that we're all very unique. We're all different. And the things we're going to want to do during the day can be as unique as our fingerprint. You know, so I think what's really important for women to think about is, what is your ideal? You know, and to not default to, well, because my partner's making all this money, I have to do everything else that's left. Instead of like, okay, we get to create whatever we want. What is my ideal situation? And what is my partner's ideal situation? You know, because Jonathan was doing a lot of things he didn't want to do. And I was doing a lot of things I didn't want to do. So we got together and we said, okay, how can we restructure our lives so that I have the life I want and you have the life you want?
So it comes back to consultation, communication, speaking with each other. And I know, luckily, that's something that Justin and I are very good at, and which is how we solve all of our things. He actually taught me a lot about that. And
so great.
What I've noticed, though, as we continue to grow together, him and I, is that it's so important for me to do my work, right? We can become so good at knowing how to have a good conversation, meaning a conversation that is a safe container, a safe space where I can show up and I take responsibility for my stuff. He takes responsibility for his stuff. We don't point fingers. We say, this is what I need, and how can we show up for each other? But to be able to do that in an authentic way and come into it with true compassion and power, you need to do the work on yourself.
Yes.
And we touched on it briefly. You said yoga, Kundalini yoga, whatever that is. It's, to me, it always comes back to movement. And I think especially for women, it's in our body, it's moving our body, it's doing whatever that means to you, a great workout or connecting back through just moving, meditation, whatever it is. But can we talk a little bit about that? The little or the big things that we can do that is our work so that we can be, excuse me, so that we can be a whole person
Yeah.
that comes into a relationship and make it even more whole, but so that we don't have two halves
Right.
that then try to become whole together.
Exactly. Exactly. It's such important work, and I love how you frame that. You know, for me, the inner work is really a combination of understanding behavioral patterns, and also for me, understanding that I'm sacred, and understanding that I am a soul that came to this planet during this time for a very specific reason. And when I'm in that place of really believing that I have purpose and that I am a piece of the puzzle that is needed for this whole system to work, all of a sudden I can feel my worth and I can feel what I deserve, and I have a knowing of myself. An example that I like to give is, if Jonathan was like, if he says something to me about, he'll just say, "Did you work out today?" Like, he's like such a fitness guy. He's just like, "Did you work out today? Like, did you see a friend?" But I take it as he thinks I'm fat. He doesn't love me. What's wrong with me? And then I get so mad at him. But if he said, "Are you a penguin?" I would just be like, "What are you talking about?" Or did you talk to a friend today? And so this comes back to, we have to know for ourselves what our truth is. So when we get triggered, it's just because we have a wobble. And so we have to work on, oh, okay, I'm noticing I need to work on my relationship with my body. I need to do the inner work to see, why do I get so triggered? Why do I have a hard time with working out? This is a thing that's up for me right now, as you can see. And to understand, what is the purpose of this? How can I work through this? What are the behavioral patterns, so that we can feel a knowing and a confidence around who we are, so that we can show up and we're not like this, what's the game with all the little blocks that stacks? You know what I mean?
Yes. Tetris?
It's not Jenga.
Jenga. Oh,
Like
that one.
Jenga with all like
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
the things pulled out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Doing the inner work helps us be like the beginning of the Jenga game, where it's hard
Right.
to knock everything over.
You have a good foundation.
Yes, exactly. But
You
it's not
you are the foundation.
right. Because what happens if we don't have an actual good inner foundation, we come at our partners with aggression.
Right.
Because it's like we feel like we need to be all shield and anger. Because really inside, we don't know who we are.
Right. And that was one thing that I wanted to talk about as well, because we're on this topic of how we are brought up to be the peacekeepers, to control our emotions, because we've been told that we're emotional and dramatic,
right,
and very, very sensitive, which is true. We are sensitive and we are emotional, but we're taught that that's a negative thing.
Exactly.
And many of us show up and we make ourselves smaller, quieter, and we're not ourselves. But then the other side of that is what I see in myself too sometimes, and I see it in other women, is that we show up and try to be the opposite of that. And now we're entitled, we're angry, we're loud, we are demanding. It's okay to be demanding, but demanding, just like asking for a lot of things that is not coming from a grounded place. And I know that when I'm in that space, no one can hear me. Right. Because everything I do is an attack. My kids cannot hear me. They laugh at that, as they should. My husband can't hear me because he's just like busy defending himself, because we're like this. Yeah. And I've been looking at that, and I see it everywhere. So what you're saying is that is us when we're trying to cover up the real wound and the real hurt and the things that really need to be communicated, but we just don't know how to show up vulnerable and with compassion for ourselves and the other person. Right. And again, that's where that work comes in.
Yeah, because since we've been taught that it's not, that being vulnerable is weak.
Right.
Then we create these protectors that do the fighting for us. but I know for me, what I've experienced is that when I touch the saddest part of me and I can allow that sadness to come through my whole body and show Jonathan how hurt I am, that has so much power. Then my
Mm-hmm.
whole energy is taking over the room. It just washes over the room, but not in a way that he wants to go into an attack. Like, this is what feminine power
Right.
is about: going into the void, going into the cave, and touching what's most true and allowing
Mm.
it to just be seen. And then in that moment, when I can do that, Jonathan will literally do anything for me. Not because I'm
Anything.
manipulating him, but because
Right.
he can see me and I'm being real and I'm not
Right.
trying to exude this false power.
And that
So,
allows him to break open.
exactly. And then he
Right.
wants to show up for me. You
Yeah.
know, as the masculine, he wants to protect me and provide for me and be there for me. You know, but if I'm also showing up in my masculine, then he just wants to, he's programmed to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a
And
good,
that I think is another beautiful thing that we can teach our partners if we are with a man, if we're in a partnership with a
yeah,
man, to remind them that they do not have to fix it.
yeah,
That's something that I very often say, because he immediately wants to, this is just his way. He wants to just fight for me,
yeah,
and fix it so that I can feel better. And my husband is a very, very aware man, but we still we both have so much
oh
more
yeah,
growth to do, and always will. And sometimes I just have to walk into conversation and say, I do not need anything to be fixed. I don't need any answers.
mhm,
I just need my safe space with you
yeah,
to express whatever it is. Um, and those times he's usually really, really amazing at holding that. And there are a lot of things that have been hidden for us here during this time because we spend so much time together,
mhm,
so much time
yeah,
together. And I've noticed that I'm actually noticing this training that I've had since I was little, that just the way how we move in our space together is so different. And again, here I know every person is unique, and there are women that are so different from me and men that are different from Justin. But he's a tornado. He's just big. He's larger than life, and he moves from room to room, and you hear him.
yeah,
And he just like he takes up space, and it's with tons of love, but you just like feel his presence.
yeah,
Um, and in that presence, when I'm in that all day, I've noticed myself making myself smaller. And I've started to say things like, excuse me, or could you please, would you mind?
yeah,
And I've just been watching that happening, and I've been wondering, why is that popping up? And then realizing that I'm just around this bigger presence, which my kids are as well, all day long.
mhm,
And I almost feel like, well, then there isn't room for me.
mm,
So I've really had to work on checking in with myself and seeing what it is that I need in a moment. And as soon as I'm able to express that to both the kids and my husband, that mommy needs some time.
yeah,
Or tonight, I just need to be alone. When the
yeah,
kids are sleeping, I know we have lots to talk about. I need to go take a bath.
yeah,
Then he lets me. It's not a problem. Even the kids go, all right, okay, if you need something, sure. And
yeah,
then they get to learn what it looks like to take care of yourself.
mhm,
And that's an important thing, because I'm sure that we have a lot of mamas here. Just something that I would want to touch on as well is that I know that we're also quick to feel guilty when we do self-care, or
right,
when we need to take care of ourselves in a moment, or even if we need a mommy timeout, because we just know that I don't have the patience right now to hold this situation.
yeah,
So I just need to take a moment to myself, as long as the kids are physically safe, of course. Um, but I can tend to feel guilty when I need to remove myself to take care of myself. And I'm learning very much through therapy
mhm,
that, sure, I'm taking their mom away for a moment and they kind of have to figure some things out on their own, but they also get to see a woman and a mother who says, oh, I just need to check back in with myself. I
mhm,
need to take care of myself. I will come back more whole.
yeah,
And that way they learn how what that looks like, how we take care of ourselves,
mhm,
how we can nurture ourselves, and
exactly.
then they feel more safe.
Mhm.
Um, and I'd love to just talk a little bit about that again, to go back to what could that self-care is a charged word that some people love, some people hate. We say that we don't have time for self-care. I only have 5 minutes.
Mhm.
But what if you only have 5 minutes and times are just crazy in your family right now because you're all on top of each other? There's a raging virus out there. We can't
Yeah.
go out and do anything. How can
Mhm.
you take care of yourself if you only have those 5 minutes
Yeah.
or 10 minutes? What could that look like?
Yeah. Such a great question. So, first, I want to say that I really think it's important to also look back before the pandemic. Did
Hmm.
you have time for self care then?
Right.
You know,
Very important.
because
Yeah.
it could be that your life was in balance and you felt like you were taking care of yourself and now you only have 5 minutes. Or it could be that you have never been taking care of yourself and now
Hmm.
you're realizing I'm going to lose my mind. And so
Right.
I'm guessing that's probably the case for a lot of us. And I would say, really great that everyone is seeing that we cannot function if we don't have time for ourselves. So, a few things I want to say. One, women's worth has been based on what we are doing and not how we are being. And so we can basically be like a caretaker robot with no soul or life force, or we can show up and have life force in us. But the the only way to cultivate life force and vibrancy is to have time with ourselves. Have time to journal and do that inner work, to have time to laugh and play and have joy, all those ways that we fill our gas tank. It's
Hmm.
so important.
Right.
And I think it's also really good to remember that, you know, 4,000 years ago, when we lived in villages, when we lived in community, young moms didn't do everything.
Right.
The grandparents were there and the kids would just go off. Even the 1 year olds would just
Hmm.
go off and play in the dirt with other young kids. There wasn't a lot
Right.
of hands on parenting that was happening. And we haven't, our brains and our bodies have not evolved since that time. So our mental health, our physical health is actually programmed in a system where we did have a lot of time for ourselves. And so I think
Hmm.
it's really important to remember that we're not built to do everything and be everything for everyone. That's a system that was imposed on us so that women would never question spinning around like a tornado or a chicken with their head cut off, doing everything for everyone, and never stopping and saying, this is messed up, right? So I think we have to get really radical with ourselves and with our partner and with our time. And um, there are times on Saturday where I have to be like, I'm having mama time from noon to 5, and I'm going to be in my room, and no one's allowed to come in. And guess what? Everyone's fine, you know?
Hmm.
And unless you're in a studio with a baby, which I know people are, but if there
Right.
is a door in your home, go to the other side of it and close it and have your partner be the bodyguard. It
Mm.
can be done. It absolutely can be done. We just don't ask for it because we don't know that we deserve it, but we cannot pour from an empty cup. It's just,
Yeah.
we're going to drive ourselves, we're going to get sick. And if
We're
we
gonna
get
get sick.
sick, they have no mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also, because I know that they shut us off at the hour mark here. That's how it works. We have another 20 minutes. We touched on something really exciting to me when we talked on the phone the other day, which brings it back to more of the existential questions right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like this is a charged time
Mm-hmm.
and we're being challenged by all the things that we've already talked about.
Yeah.
And we're a month in now, at least here in LA, we are a month into this self-quarantine situation. We've been shocked, we've been wrestling with this new normal, and now we've kind of, I think people are beginning to find a new sort of routine and rhythm. At least that's where I'm finding myself. I'm calming down. I'm surrendering a little bit more to the situation the way that it is. And I'm also watching a lot of Instagram lives and I'm learning things.
Yeah.
And I'm doing more breath work. I make sure to bookend my day. I start it right and I end it right. And that does everything for me. I do cold plunges. Like we're experimenting now with the things that work.
Mm-hmm.
And having conversations like this one where we learn about the real work that
Right.
can really pick us up and help us thrive rather than suffer. But we were talking about, there's also this feeling of, we are fine. We're definitely fine right now, and this will all be fine. But there's that question of, will we continue to have pandemics? Is this like part of our new life? Are we going to be going into self-quarantine? Will the next virus maybe be more aggressive than this one? What's going to happen? I feel like there are a lot of existential questions coming up. What is life going to be like? What's the purpose of all this? What's my job right now as everything is changing? Am I supposed to go into a chrysalis versus a quarantine?
Mm-hmm.
Like, should I see this as an opportunity, as a good thing? And then what does that mean? What do I do with that? And it goes back to what you started this call with. Who am I?
Yeah.
Why am I here? Who am I as a woman? What can I hold? And then proving to ourselves all the things that we can hold.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about this being a time of spiritual intelligence.
Yeah.
Or that the situation has a spiritual intelligence to it. I don't want to butcher it, but would you mind talking a little bit about that?
I'd love to. So this is what I believe, and I share this belief with thousands of other spiritually oriented people on the planet. But I want everyone to take, sit with this in themselves. But what a lot of people are saying is that, this time was prophesized and there's been clues and there is this opportunity to really look at all the things that aren't working, not only in our lives, but in the outside life. And, from a purely magical perspective, what I've noticed happening is that I do a lot of work with signs where I'll be like, if this is what I need to do, show me a hawk. If this is what I need to do, show me a frog. And it used to be that I would say that and it would take like a week for the sign to come through. Now I'm saying those things and it's taking 10 minutes. Wow. So there is this sort of frequency change that I'm feeling on the planet because I'm so connected with the unseen world. And, the other thing that I think is interesting to look at is, do you remember when they said like the world was going to end in 2012?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the end of the Mayan calendar.
Right.
And we've just gone through a 7-year cycle, past 2012. And so really what I believe has been happening is that there have been all of these changes, all of these signs that have happened over the past 7 years. And this is a really major one that can bring us into a completely new frequency. And to bring that into like actual personal terms, what I'm really seeing in my life is people getting that our own frequency, our own mental health, our own happiness, the way we're taking care of ourselves actually is important. And when we change what's happening in here, it changes our perspective of what's happening around us. I mean, I've seen, even for me, I've been taking a lot more care of my physical and mental and spiritual health because I know that it's all I have. And the thing is, it's all we've ever had, but we're just seeing that so clearly. And there's this awareness that we need to pick our head up and not be so caught up in the rat race and see where are the holes in this system? How am I contributing to it? And, I know for me, I've been noticing, wow, I used to produce so much waste, so much
Mm-hmm.
wasted food, so much
Yeah.
wasted plastic, so much wasted product. And I'm seeing that. So
Yeah.
yes, we can talk about it from a perspective of, um, we're moving from a 3D to a 5D reality, or the frequency is changing, but also I think we're all feeling that, even if that's not the language that we use, we can feel this feeling of like, wow, I wonder if everything's going to be different. And I really believe that it's going to, and that we're being asked to really shift from a me to a we perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But in the we perspective, we understand that our health is the only way to keep, to move and evolve our collective system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I love how you said, I took a note of this in our phone call. You said it's almost like we're in the birth canal right now.
Yeah,
It's like a birth,
it
and we're
is.
experiencing contractions. They're uncomfortable, they're wild, and then there's the ecstasy, there's the pain. It really does feel, I mean, if you've been through birth, this is kind of similar, but to
Yeah,
the spirit almost. It does
right,
feel like this weird, oh my gosh, I'm going from something into something else, and I don't know what the hell is going on or what's going to be on the other side.
right.
But I've come to realize for myself that I don't want to go back to
Yeah,
normal.
yeah,
I don't. And I really hope that I can take a lot of things from this time, um, and just change and grow and make whatever emerges
mhm.
from this, whoever I am, and make that just that person a little bit more whole,
It's
and
so,
letting her be who she is.
mhm.
But
And I
I'm
think we're
wondering,
all,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I just think we're all getting clues
Mm-hmm.
as to what we need to do to birth a new life. So,
Right.
all of the things that feel hard are all of the things that your soul needs to process and work through in order to be new, in order
Right.
to actually become who you're meant to become. And what's so cool about this time is that we don't actually have to act on it. It's just seeing what was broken before, and then doing the work to know what we deserve, so that when this is over and we're released back into the world, we can operate from a totally different operating system.
Mm.
But I think like there's an intelligence that is teaching each one of us what we need to know in order to be a part of this new earth.
Right. So, because I've been thinking about people who are feeling like they're drowning right now.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Yeah.
Multiple kids, no help,
Yeah.
maybe a single parent, no work. Where's the money going to come from? And it just feels too much. It almost feels like the spirituality would be a luxury right now,
Oh yeah.
right?
Totally.
Seeing it from this perspective would be a luxury,
Mm-hmm.
because there's just stuff,
Yeah.
real stuff
Yeah.
that is just piling on top of you. And I'm wondering if we can talk about what a person in that situation could do right now. And I'd love, you kind of touched on it a little bit just now, is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be of action. Sometimes it's just noticing what is coming up
Mm-hmm.
and what is challenging you. And if there are material, worldly things that are challenging you, what is that feeling that it's giving you? And where is that coming from? And just allowing yourself to fully feel the things that are coming up, right?
Yeah.
Almost like putting the emotions on as garments and trying them out and
Mm-hmm.
feeling them and moving with them. And that's where movement
Yeah.
comes back in. Um, but do you have anything that you would want to share with anybody who's in that situation with
Yeah.
very little support? How can she or he support themselves
Mm-hmm.
in a
Totally.
very simple way?
Well, I think that it's so important for anyone who's in that situation to know that no one should have to be in this situation, and that this is a terrible outcome of a system that doesn't support everybody. And so I would say to first not feel like not to blame yourself. And this is really a time to go into surrender and to be radical in asking for help. You know, so if you are struggling with money, ask for money. If you're struggling with food, call all of your friends and ask if they have any food to spare. And to not feel guilty about that. Like, there are ways to reach out. And I think that we just can't suffer in silence anymore. You know, we have to pick up with the phone and say, I am really at my wit's end, and I need some help just figuring out how I'm going to manage my kids, you know, for the near foreseeable future. Or I need someone to drop off food for me and I can't pay for it and I just don't know what to do. We just have to send out the smoke signals, you know, and just say, like, I really am drowning here. And because what I've seen in my work, because I absolutely have clients who are in that position, and I ask, have you asked for help? And they're just like, no, everyone else is having a hard time. I'm like, no, this is not the time to be proud. And do you see, we're coming right back to the beginning of this conversation, and not be a burden.
Yeah.
You know, we just have to get over that. We're going from me to we. We have to help each other.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that makes me feel called to just saying that if you are really struggling, on We Are AMMA, at We Are AMMA, we will be sharing different hotlines. If you feel like you are just at the point where you want to hurt yourself, or you're in a domestic violence situation, which is also unfortunately heightened right now, we're going to share the hotlines that you can call if you need immediate help and you have nobody else to call, because it's so important to just ask for help. Like you just said, Sarah, you have to ask for help. And you're not alone in this.
No.
You are not. Is there anything else? We have 5 more minutes. Is there anything else? Yes, please.
That's on my mind.
Yeah.
And so first, to review, everyone, the work is to identify the brainwashing, and then know what you want. And then the step that we haven't talked about, which is the thing that I wanted to mention, is not to like subtly ask for what you want in the middle of not getting it. Right. So it's like, so that's what's something I used to do all the time. Like, I had made this decision that I don't want to do the dishes anymore. And then Jonathan asked me to do the dishes. And all of a sudden I'm so frustrated and mad because I have all this pent up anger and sadness around doing too much. And so I think that the work to do is to tell your partner, I have a really important conversation I want to have with you. Can we have it after dinner, after the kids go to bed? And you sit on the couch and you say, I'm really nervous to talk to you about this. I'm feeling guilty, but this is so important to me. And I really need you to listen, and I will tell you when you can talk. And so when we create that container, like, women are great at creating containers, and like safe, sacred spaces. And when we are clear, this is really important to me and it's really hard, that is almost always a situation where a conversation can go really well.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your time and your wisdom and your heart with us. This has been, like, I feel like I'm buzzing because it's so much. It's deep. It's deep. It's deep stuff.
Well, this
is big stuff.
I really feel like this is one of the most important times of our lives. And we can really use this to create something really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And again, we're not in this alone. We're in this together. I just want to make sure that I say this. Oh yeah. So, first of all, you have a website.
I do.
Can you share that with us
Yes,
real quick? And we will share it on We Are Alma later.
it's Sarah Jenks, Sarah with an H, JENKS.com.
Please, for yourselves, check it out.
Oh,
It's amazing. Sarah's doing really, really incredible work. And if you go and sign up for Amma's emails, the Friday emails, go to @WeAreAmma, AMMA. You can actually go to the link in my bio and just click there to sign up for our emails. And we're going to be sending a replay of this video together with some golden nuggets from our conversation that you can read, just read through if that's easier. And you'll also amazingly get access to Sarah's 7-day program, which is called Back to Me, the Back to Me Challenge, where you give women small acts to do every day to kind of take our life back, know our worth, and feel alive no matter how drained or tired or just out of it we feel, right?
those
Did I say that
5
right?
minutes of self-care that we were talking about.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. That will take care of all those questions that we had today,
Yeah.
which is awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for
Thank you.
joining us. Thank you again, Sarah, for your time. This was so lovely. All the best to all of you out there, and we'll see you soon.
All right.